They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello everybody, welcome to Everybody is Dead Dave, the Red Dwarf review podcast where I, Phil Hawkins, a longtime fan of Red Dwarf, is joined every week by Adam Martyn, the newbie to every episode of Red Dwarf.
Yes, hello, making my journey through this lovely series. 7 series in. I am enjoying it, new listeners, don't worry. It's a good show, I'm in it for the long haul. But yeah, it's my first time, as it were.
So we always have 2 perspectives on every episode, at least 2 perspectives, because sometimes we have a guest as well. And today we are joined by a guest from overseas, across the pond, as people like to say, in the US of A. Introducing our guest, Anne Peake.
Hello, thank you for having me on. We're talking about Red Dwarf, so it couldn't get better.
We are talking about Red Dwarf. Now, what's your history of Red Dwarf? Because you run a Twitter account, don't you?
I run... in place of the actual creator, I run the Twitter account, the Facebook account, and the Instagram account until she comes back.
Of ChrisBarrie fans?
ChrisBarrie fans, yes.
Okay, so you're the sort of temporary custodian of that Twitter account.
Temporary, and I don't know how.
What's happened to the original custodian of that Twitter account, the originator?
She had another project come up and just asked me to take over until she comes back, and I don't know when that will be.
And how long have you been manning that Twitter account for now then?
Since March.
Okay.
Nice.
There we go. So what would you, if you were to sell this Twitter account to the audience here? I mean, most of them probably already know you because you have a lot more followers than we do. But what is it?
It is a Twitter account, or the accounts are celebrating ChrisBarrie himself in all of his roles and in all of his work. From the past 30 or more years.
So not just Red Dwarf.
Not just Red Dwarf, but many, many, many of the fans are Red Dwarf fans. So
yeah. But I bet have you got some British Empire fans in there as well?
A few, yes.
A few, yeah.
It's not as, I know British was more mainstream when it was on the air, but I think Red Dwarf is much more popular among ChrisBarrie's fan base.
Yeah, it's probably, unless you were there in the 90s.
Yes.
I doubt many people have come across it in the years since.
Were you there in the 90s, Phil?
Yes, as you like to, yes, you do like to point this out, that I am that age, that I was there in the 90s. I did watch British Empire the first time round. It's a very good show. I need to check out if it's on BritBox or something.
It has come back on somewhere. I don't remember where, but they're redoing the whole series.
Fantastic.
I wish I could remember where.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have to do a special episode where we go and review that just for an episode, just to see if it holds up after all these years. For this episode, though, we're sticking with Red Dwarf, and we are up to, and this is the reason why I got you on for this episode, because obviously you're heavily involved in this ChrisBarrie's fan Twitter account. It seemed appropriate to get you on for Stoke Me a Kipper. ChrisBarrie's last... A clipper, that's it. Stoke Me a Clipper.
He messed that up. Rimmer messed that up pretty well.
Yeah, Rimmer messes it up. And that's, I didn't remember that. When I looked at the episode title, I was like, that's the wrong quote. Surely it's Smoke Me a Kipper. Have I been mishearing it all these years? And it's only when I rewatched the episode that I remembered, oh, that's why, because at the end he misses up the quote. And I got it.
Smoke Me a Kipper sounds, I don't know if it is a British thing, but it sounds... To me, that sounds like it wouldn't be a natural saying anyway. So
I mean, it's not a natural saying, but it's something that I suppose you could do. You could get a kipper, which I think is a type of fish, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think
and
so.
You could smoke it in the same way as you get smoked salmon. So I'm guessing that's what
I think it's just meant to evoke that sort. I mean, we'll discuss it in this pre-credits bit of the episode, but like Ace Rimmer, I guess, is sort of aiming for that caricature of like the, B-movie 1950s, like, like the Flash Gordon. I think we've said that before, haven't we? Like the Flash Gordon-y type heroes, like, very, very buff, very masculine, and is very, just comes out with all these quotes that, like you said, Anna, like, they're not natural quotes, but they're very memorable because they are good quotes. Like, I can see why people took Ace Rimmer to their hearts and why they've brought him back This is the third time we've seen him, I think, chronologically. So yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice to see him back. But this, I mean, we'll get into it. But that whole pre-credits scene this time, I loved it.
Yeah, it was good.
Amazing.
I'll just do the synopsis first, so that we've got that in our heads.
Yes.
The synopsis on IMDb reads: Daredevil pilot Ace Rimmer, seriously wounded after rescuing Princess Bonjela from the Nazis, arrives on board Starbug to recruit Rimmer to take his place as the next Ace Rimmer. Will Rimmer continue the legacy of Ace Rimmer?
I wonder.
So, it starts with this quite dramatic pre-title sequence. Ace is captured by Nazis, very Indiana Jones kind of vibe to it, I thought, with the Nazis there. And he's on a plane, and I did like the line that the Nazi has, that take him into the hold. I'm not doing the accent. Take him into the hold, take 10 minutes to explain all our plans to him, and then throw him out the hold, sort of playing on that trope of bad guys elaborately explaining their plans to the good guys.
Very self-aware as well.
Oh God, yeah. It's a lovely pastiche, isn't it? Like there was like James Bond references, like the line, "Oh, you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Rimmer, I expect you to die." That's straight out of Goldfinger, and like the whole. I loved again like the B movie stuff, like because when he falls out the plane, like obviously it's, you know, we can tell it's very obvious like a CG shot, but it just made me think of all those like glorious B movies from like the 50s to the 70s where you know they try and make it realistic, and it's those films you sort of watch now and you go like, oh, like they tried, do you know what I mean? And for me this was like perfectly emulating that, like surfing on a crocodile. It's a perfect example of the kind of homage that Red Dwarf can perfectly get away with, because it's rooted in this comedy, and it's just I loved it, to be honest. If the whole episode had been like this, had been just Ace Rimmer in this story, I'd have been here for it. I mean, we'll talk about the rest of the episode later on, but after the pre-credits I was like, hey, if this is the whole episode, I'm in.
It would have been amazing. That crocodile, the obviously fake crocodile. I love Snappy because it's the James Bond bad guy pet that's a full-size crocodile, and he just tosses him over and it lands on Ace and Ace is struggling with him. And I'm like, okay, that is cheesy and charming and funny and kind of cool.
Yeah, it just works.
the visuals on this, you mentioned the obviously fake crocodile, and also the green screen effects are a bit iffy, to say the best, and there's some quite dodgy stock footage in here. Do you think that was deliberately iffy?
I think so.
Or do you think that was the limitations of the time?
I think so. What do you think, Anne?
The limitations of the budget, possibly.
It seemed deliberate to me, but in a later scene there is something that looked like it could have been really cool at the time in the 90s. But the SFX just didn't hold up as well. But I think this was more, they're making it look a certain way.
Yeah. I think you're probably right, because we've been saying this series in particular has gotten quite a lot more cinematic than the previous series. And so the fact that they would let something like this slip through and it not be deliberate, because it does look so jarring with some of the rest of the visuals they've got in the series. Even if there are some that don't quite hold up, this looks even worse than that, I don't think. I think even
intentionally, I think, because I think Doug Naylor by this time had become the kind of director that knows what he wanted it to look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there's some of those later shots in the episode with, Starbug flying around. And it's I know we've mentioned before with Series 7, it's that really awkward phase back in the late 90s of TV's doing CG now. But obviously, budgets and all that. And like you said, Anne, I think you're right. I'm sure back in 97, and Phil, you might be able to attest to it, like, I'm sure sequences like that were like, oh, wow, yeah, this is pretty cool to see. But sadly, the passage of time, nearly 25 years, I'd say hasn't been too kind to those CGI shots in particular, the ones of Starbug. I think you're right about the intentionally iffy ones in the pre-credits, but yeah, any of like the space Starbug ones, I'm like, I like it, I can see how it worked then, but sadly, just because of time, it doesn't quite work now. But that's the same for like even the big budget movies of the day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think like HD television makes everything that might have passed way back when. It's like, all right, I can see some of the things that shouldn't probably have been seen.
That's true. I suppose in that way, it probably benefits me watching these on my phone, which is when I watch most of them on my phone while I'm making notes and stuff. And in that respect, that's probably a benefit for me because it's more close. Even though it is a high quality screen, it's going to be closer to the size of the screens,
right?
That they would have had at the time.
We should have gone authentic, Phil. We should have got the CRT televisions out, got your VHS player.
Yes.
That's how we should have done it.
That's how I originally watched it, so I don't think I even noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. So while Ace is while he's riding the crocodile, which I must admit is quite a cool visual, him just sort of tying up, riding it like a sort of, no, not a surfboard. That's not quite the right word, but he's basically tied it up and he's riding this through the sky, and then he tackles the Nazi guy who's parachuted out, steals his parachute, and then but then he's shot at by some German officers from the ground, and one of them does hit him.
Luckiest shot ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is TV sci-fi. The bad guys never hit anybody in TV sci-fi.
Yeah, bad shots.
The guy later who was chasing them couldn't hit them from like 20 feet away, but this guy on the ground hits a falling Ace Rimmer, hard light hologram in the light.
Yeah, and he must have hit him because it hits his light beam, so it's like a very small area that it needed to hit to actually get him. And it manages to get that.
The luckiest guy ever.
Yeah, definitely. But so he crashes down to the floor. He still manages to rescue the princess, though. So that's good. The Princess Bonjela, as it is.
Gum ointment? That's a gum ointment, right?
It
Bonjela?
is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he sort of rescues her, and there's another great line from him, which is,
Princess Bonjela, Ace Rimmer. There'll be time for explanations later, and hopefully some sex.
it's another great Ace Rimmer line.
Yeah.
I did also like when the guy, when he escapes the Germans, and just after the Germans have had the crocodile fall on them, then another German comes along, and we get that classic line that everybody says about Ace Rimmer, what a guy, but in German.
Was für ein Kerl.
Which seems to he's already well known in this dimension. In 1940s Germany, he's like, we're lucky to be alive, and he's got the what a guy thing. So maybe he's been there before, or another version of him. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to spoil it.
That's it's fine because I think if people are listening to this, they've seen the episode. I figure so we can talk about stuff out of order. That's fine. He's not the only Ace Rimmer. We will talk about that a bit later on.
Yeah.
But that does bring up an interesting point that and I'll get into this a bit more later on as well. But the whole chronology of Ace Rimmers, I don't think makes a whole lot of sense. But we can. You kind of have to figure that he travels dimensions, but also time, because he left from the original Ace left from his time and space to hit 3 million years in the future to meet our Arnold Rimmer, and he's been to 1940s Earth in another dimension. So it might be that just the time and space is not linear, so there could be more Ace Rimmers, but I don't know if there would be that many, because that seemed like a whole lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of them there.
Yeah, there is. So that's the pre-title sequence, and we get the lovely titles, and then we are into Lister going into virtual reality with a book of cheats to bed the Queen of Camelot.
To seduce her, in big air quotes.
Yes.
yeah, massive air quotes. Yeah. I noticed as well that when we go to the medieval place, we're only 2 episodes into series 7, and of course I know both of you guys have seen the rest, so you'll probably know what's to come. But so far, in the past 6 series, in terms of location work, so not on Starburg or not on Red Dwarf or on a ship in space, there was maybe always one episode to a push that was location heavy, and we had that last episode, with the whole JFK thing, but there's a lot of location work here too. So I'm wondering, in I'll find out as I go in the coming weeks. But I wonder if that's going to be like a running thing throughout this series. Are we getting more like location work? That's my thoughts on it anyway.
Yeah, it could be part of sort of Doug Naylor wanted it to be more cinematic this series. Because he wanted to he was gearing it to line up to be maybe a movie at some points, and he wanted the American syndication and stuff. So he was very keen for it to look more cinematic for this series. And I wonder if that's part of that as well, trying to make it look a bit more interesting than just having the standing sets all the time.
I believe he made a few changes to make it more cinematic for the theatrical release. So he put a lot of time and work into it, and unfortunately, it never got be made into a movie. But he's tried.
Yeah,
one of
those changes was the set for the cockpit, which the new set for the cockpit has allowed for much more cinematic camera movements, because previously in previous series it was pretty much a static camera for the cockpit. You might have in slightly different positions for the cameras, but they were pretty much always static. But here, when we do, it's after the VR stuff, so we'll go back to the VR stuff in a minute. But as we were on the topic, there was a lovely sweeping around the sort of the cockpit window as when they're having the emergency later, with the camera movement that is very cinematic and does look really good.
That is one thing you could say about 7 is that it's shot to be something that might be a movie, and it's shot very well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So back in the VR anyway, Crichton is not happy with this plan at all. No. He thinks it's very immoral for some reason. I mean, it's a VR game. I don't know why he's got such a problem with it. It's not like this is the first time that Lister has gone into VR with his groinal attachment on
for his own ends.
Yeah. I think Crichton called him scum twice, which is very unusual because Lister is his favorite person in the universe, and to hear that from Crichton was kind of shocking. And for me, what I didn't really like about it was that Lister didn't go into. I mean, it was the way he did it. Going in and saying, if I win this contest, can I be inside your wife for a day and a night? And that kind of I was like, that's kind of creepy. And then the wife was like, hey, there's this new guy that just wants to, and she's like, yeah. And that's kind of creepy. And the king is like, I don't know what to do. I think in the real world, the king would be like, traitor, you're both dead. And he was kind of like, oh, can we talk about it? But I don't see Lister going, like Rimmer said, in Series 6, you only use it for sex. That's what he wants to use it for. It's not necessarily to play Wimbledon or to have a joust. It's I
mean, I suppose he's a deep space with no company.
He's alone.
You can't blame him. You can't blame him.
I do agree that line about as you said, Anne, quite like the way he described it sort of made me go like, and I know we've said this before on the show where obviously, these series, I get it, they were made decades ago and attitudes have changed, times have changed. It's like, would they necessarily get away with that joke now? Maybe not. Or would it, be in the show? But I don't know. It's lines like that though. I had the same reaction as you. Just like, wow, that's a bit. I know Lister is a bit, he's a bit randy for want of a better word. But like, out of all the ways you could have gotten that across, and the way they have gotten it across before, where it comes off as crass and funny, but not like say it's not creepy. Yeah. This one was just a bit like, that's.
Yeah. When he went back in I don't remember which episode it was, but he went back to win the bad girl. That seemed more natural for Lister than, what he did this time.
Yeah.
But it's part of the show, so you have to kind of grin and bear it. There are things.
That's it. You slide
that is
through.
It does. I did like the king was played by Brian Cox, the actor, which I didn't realize at the time, and I only realized when I came to the IMDb page later. I was like, oh wow, that was Brian Cox. And so that's quite. And the queen was played by Sarah Alexander of sort of Smack the Pony and Green Wing fame, and Coupling as well. Stephen Moffat's Coupling. So I recognise
they got some very famous people to be in their show before they took off. So
they
spotted talent for
Yeah, they got them.
They did, and I mean even afterwards, Brian Cox was had been a famous actor for a while. I think before that. So they by this point in the show, I think they'd gotten enough clout to attract already famous people, which is quite good as well.
Can I ask, was the man who played the Nazi bad guy, was he famous? Because he seemed to be really enjoying the role, and it seemed to be like.
There's a question.
Which one?
As in the main one?
The one up in the plane that jumped out?
The one that jumped out of the plane.
That's a good question.
He looked familiar, and I don't know if it's because he played something in like maybe a Bond film or something like that. He was an older.
I don't know which one of these characters on IMDb he might be. Would it be Lieutenant or Gestapo officer?
If it was Captain Voorhees, I don't know if that was him. Kenneth Morley. He was.
I've heard that name.
He was Reg Holdsworth in Coronation Street from 1989 to 1995.
Oh, wow.
And he was General Leopold von Flockenstuffen in the BBC sitcom Allo Allo from 1988 to 1991.
Oh,
so maybe, yeah. I mean, if he was playing a German general in Allo Allo, it only makes sense, doesn't it? So,
yes.
I think it might be Allo Allo.
Him on Coronation, but
yeah.
I think I might have recognised him from Allo Allo, which is another great. Have you seen Allo Allo, Adam?
I've seen odd bits and pieces, but I've not seen like tons of it.
That's another.
I liked what I saw.
Classic British. That's the next podcast then. Hello. Once we finish this one.
We're going through that, yeah.
Cool. So Lister of Smeg, as he introduces himself, challenges the King's Knights to a duel and uses these cheat codes to. Initially, I thought this was quite funny. I don't know what you guys thought. That turned his horse into a pony.
I loved it. It reminded me of I grew up in like the PlayStation 1 era when like cheats on video games were like the in thing. You know, for like stupid things, it was like big head mode and things like that. And that literally the way it happened, it just reminded me of that. And I laughed out loud a lot because I was like, oh my god, it's like they've done small horse mode or something like that. So I really liked it.
And I how do you guys feel about the chastity belt joke then?
I didn't understand it because I thought that chastity belts were worn by women when their husbands were away. So why would the queen be wearing a chastity belt when the king was there? Maybe she wasn't trustworthy around people when her husband was
maybe
there.
not.
I don't know, but it just didn't make sense. I thought it was humorous and I could see where they were going, but it just didn't make sense. I'm kind of logical that way.
No, that's fair. That's fair. We've said that before. There's various moments in this show where we're like, we see what they're going for, but it doesn't really like land correct. Yeah, so I get what you mean. Yeah. And then, but it seems to forget that joke pretty quickly because then as soon as Lister goes in that tent, I was like, somehow they're gonna do like a sex joke basically, and then sure enough, there it was. So
yeah, he pops his head out and asks for whipped cream.
Yes.
He asks the king for whipped cream.
Yeah,
he does. Yeah.
Very. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. If this was a real world medieval king, I think their heads would be on a thing right now.
Yeah.
Would be detached from their bodies by this point.
And maybe the king is not supposed to be effective in the game. Maybe that's the thing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Camelot, I suppose, as opposed to any real life, real king and queen. So, but Lister's fun times in the tent, which is certainly jiggling about a bit, suddenly comes to a bit of a abrupt stop when the tent and the queen disappear and we just see him lying on the floor, presumably, I mean, I didn't quite catch it, but presumably with his trousers around his ankles or something.
Yes.
Because there's been some kind of power drain, so they have to come out of VR, and that's when they head to the cockpit and see what's going on.
The thing about them coming out of the VR is you get to see Lister with the groinal attachment.
Groinal attachment, yeah.
That was kind of funny.
Yeah, because that got mentioned.
Setting up for that.
That got mentioned in Gunman of the Apocalypse, I think, was the first time the groinal attachment got mentioned. And it's good. Yeah, it's good to see it here as well. What did you guys think about? Because I initially, when they were trying to work out what was going on, and Rimmer goes, "Oh, I hope it isn't Ace," That seemed a bit like, really? Like, all the
Well-
other times things have happened and you haven't gone, I hope it's not Ace. And this time it is Ace. It seemed very...
Kat actually mentioned somebody of enormous power and, or what was it? Charisma, dimension jumping. So I don't know how they could have thought it was anybody else.
Oh, okay. I must have
don't-
misheard that bit then.
And then Rimmer said the last time it happened, it was Ace Rimmer. So that was also the first time it happened. Was in Dimension Jump.
Yeah.
So.
But I did like, though, that then when it cuts back and it has been revealed as Ace, and then it cuts back to Rimmer and he's just banging his head.
The console, yeah.
That was funny.
Dear.
Yeah.
You could tell right away that Arnold Rimmer still has no like for Ace Rimmer. He's just hasn't let that go.
And ChrisBarrie's so good at physical comedy as well. Like the headbanging, like in that moment, I think that like from an acting standpoint, like that sort of moment can so easily be like overdone or like overplayed, so it doesn't really land as a joke. But he just every time there's like physical punchlines, he nails it every single time.
So once Ace comes aboard, it sort of does his hellos and like hey listy and all that sort of stuff. He asks Rimmer to go for a walk with him. Rimmer's very reluctant, doesn't want to, but the others sort of convince him to. And Ace collapses, and when he's being shown to his room by Rimmer, and admits to Rimmer that he's dying because of the bullet that hit his light bee. And this is where he admits that he's not the original Ace that the crew had met before.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
And now, I mean, both myself and I presume you, Anne, have seen this many times, so we knew what was coming when we were watching this time. But Adam, how did you, as the first time watching this, how did you find that revelation?
Well, I was surprised because obviously Ace Rimmer's always been portrayed as like being this, like the Flash Gordon, indestructible hero. And even when he got shot, they never really carried on. He just got shot, made a joke about his top, and they moved on. So I didn't really expect that to carry over. But no, I was quite intrigued when he was like, you've got to like carry on the mantle, like the idea, and obviously learning that we quickly learned that this Ace Rimmer is apparently not the original. He's one of many of like a lineage who's been passed down. And it made me think it's like the famous like James Bond 007 theory.
Yes.
Like that James Bond is just a title that gets passed down to different hence different actors and whatnot. It just sort of made me think of that, like the Ace Rimmer theory, like different Rimmers just get it. But no, I didn't see it coming, I'll say that much, and I was intrigued to see how it resolved, which we'll get to as we go.
One question I had about the chronology of this is what I was referring to earlier, is that he says to what I think are contradictory things, because he says the Ace you met last time, and then he refers to him as he passed it down to me or something, implying that was his direct predecessor. But we were shown in that he is the original Ace Rimmer from his universe. Like he was raised and became Ace Rimmer, not because it was passed down to him in that Dimension Jump episode, but because that's how he grew up.
Right.
So where do all these other Ace Rimmers that have apparently existed fit in? Like if this Ace got it directly from that Ace, where are all the other ones coming from?
I think it's just one of those Red Dwarf moments where we acknowledge it and we carry on.
Yeah, I guess so. It's
got to be like I said, there may be like he would go to a different timeline and pass it on to somebody else from that dimension. And it could be that there's a lot of Ace Rimmers out there, but it's hard to tell how and why each one was chosen. I think this one was chosen because he was closest. Obviously, he wasn't like the best fit for it, but this Ace had only a limited amount of time to get to his successor. So there, and who knows, maybe there's a limited amount of Arnold Rimmers to come and replace him, or maybe this is his last one.
Yeah.
Rimmer doesn't particularly want to accept this because he thinks of Ace as a smug git who is up himself too much. But Lister kind of uses a bit of reverse psychology onto him into accepting it, basically going like, oh, you'd be rubbish. Why would you want it? Yeah. And making him go, no, I wouldn't. I've already accepted it. So he sort of quite cleverly uses a bit of reverse psychology there. And And I do think there's quite a lot of nice stuff between Rimmer and Lister in this episode.
I do too.
Their friendship, and it is a friendship, I think, by this point, has come a long way since that first series.
He has. I was surprised. I mean, we mentioned like end of series 6, start of series 7. He shows more of like a gusto or bravery. You know, he's the one who sets the events of series 7 into motion by shooting the time drive. And we said in the last episode, he comes across as, you know, a bit more like level-headed, a bit more mature, maybe a bit less cold than before. And at first I was a bit, because I said to Phil last week, I was like, I hope they sort of, you know, carry this on. They don't do the thing Red Dwarf does sometimes, you know, where they just like forget something that's happened to a character. And at first I was a bit worried because I got it in a way, because obviously he doesn't like Ace, but they were amping up the whole cowardly aspect again. But it was nice, you know, to again sort of see that change as this episode, you know, as he slowly embraced the Ace Rimmer persona, if you like.
Yes, I think part of the reason why I like this episode so much is because you get to see, when it comes down to it, Lister will push, brotherly shove Rimmer into doing the right thing. The thing that it's supposed to make him a better person, a hero, something that he never was before. And my theory is that all Arnold Rimmers are supposed to be heroes. They just didn't get to it during their developing years.
Yeah.
So this is a way to push to get him to that point.
Yeah, and that scene as well, like when Lister's sort of, you know, like almost, I guess, baiting him at first, you know, about the whole, I can't believe he wants you to be the new Ace Rimmer, and like you said, Anne, quite correctly, it is that sort of brotherly sort of knowledge of each other. Because me and Phil have said, haven't we, Phil, over the series, like obviously they start out and you think these guys are polar opposites, you know, how are they going to get along, how are we going to get this dynamic, but the show's been really good at sort of giving us these little scenes every now and then where it's not just, you know, like, you know, not just insults or squabbling or anything like that. Those little moments where they do understand each other, whether they're having like a heart-to-heart or one's like baiting the other through their knowledge of the other one. And I really liked it.
The old heart-to-hearts on the observation dome of the Red Dwarf in the first couple of seasons. Missed those.
Yes, I know. Yeah, it seems like ages ago now.
When they were still young and didn't know what was going on.
In the early days,
So Rimmer has accepted. He goes to be trained by Ace, and they do a bit of this training in VR. There's not much training going on, really. It's kind of just, I'm going to take you into VR to train you, which basically is them flying on magic carpets and doing some kind of mantra, and then that's kind of it. That's it for the training.
I would have loved to see more like a montage of different things, but it seemed like he was just saying you have to be up, you know, this brave, this self-aware, this aware, or this good to be Ace Rimmer, and then maybe he got more training after that, or like it was just the beginning of his training. But I would have liked to seen him do other things with him, because when I first saw Dimension Jump, I thought Ace was more like an explorer. Like he got the wildfire and went off to see new dimensions and meet new Arnold Rimmers. And in this one, it turns out he's also, because of his training in the original's training in the Marines, I believe, that he was also a hero directly, like he would overthrow governments and save galaxies. And it seemed like Arnold would have needed or wanted some actual physical training to get him, you know, and that's
ready,
where Lister comes in. Later.
Of course, because when he's Rimmer, Ace even is too ill to carry on and is sort of bedridden, that's when a knight appears, a knight from the VR game. And first of all, I was very confused by this, because I was like, how is the VR knight there?
This is Red Dwarf.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's pretty. But I was
like, are they going to explain this? But then they didn't need to explain it at the end, because Rimmer dressed up as Ace, because he's been told to sort of fool the others into thinking he's Ace. So he's got on all the gear, and he fights it and wins. He fires a bazooka at it, but the bazooka turns out to have a blank. After he's gone, we find this out because the knight gets up, and it's Lister just dressed up as the knight.
Of course.
My first thought when the knight got up was probably, when I first saw it, was probably, oh, he didn't actually get him. He's going to come after Lister or something. But then he removed his helmet. I was like, all right, good job.
Yeah, I love the little swapping as well, like the blank and the live rounds. I thought that was quite cute. Like, that was quite sweet. But yeah.
He set it up really well.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that Lister was in on it and knows everything that's going on. But the cat and Crichton, don't they think, when they go in and see that the light bee has finally failed, they think it's Rimmer that has died because of the knight, and they make up that said the knight came out and killed him. So I quite like the fact that it's just Lister that's in on it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like the whole crew are in on it, because then it's, sort of ruin it.
And then Rimmer is still kind of in shock, and I don't know if it's because Ace had died or because now he's like, there's no backing out. And he's so in shock that he can't really process what's going on. And Lister's the one who says, no, that's Rimmer that's died fighting against the knight. And it's more of Lister's support of Rimmer becoming Ace.
Yeah. And then they do have a lovely, Lister and Rimmer do have a lovely heart-to-heart, which, again, if they'd been on Red Dwarf, I like to think it would have been in the observation deck. But sadly, they've lost Red Dwarf, so that's not possible.
No. It's called Red Dwarf. What are we going to do?
I know. Yeah. It's a lovely, again, coming back to this episode, it's kind of about Rimmer, but it's also about Lister and Rimmer's relationship and the culmination of that, and it's just really nice, I think. Yeah,
it's a lovely little scene, and I actually quite like the moment, just pedaling back a minute, just when ChrisBarrie, when he, you know what, so, sorry, get my words straight. So when Rimmer first, has to start pretending to be Ace in front of the others, and that you get that whole gag about, the voice thing, like, oh, my voice keeps changing. Like, I think that is a great acting moment from ChrisBarrie, because obviously he's playing the two separate characters, and which he's already doing double the work, which he's done before, but they're two clearly different characters, and he does that well. But to sort of find, an in-between, in one character, because he's essentially having to do both at the same time. And the way he effortlessly swaps between, like, the Rimmer voice and then the Ace voice, or, like, he finds that... that whole scene, I was like, that's a great acting masterclass if you want to do, like, different characters and straddling them both.
Because he's playing Rimmer playing Ace. So he's not playing Ace, he's playing Rimmer playing Ace. So it's subtly different. It's different. And he does.
And also, he's playing Rimmer playing Ace, who's not quite the Ace Rimmer from Dimension Jump, because he sounds a little different and he moves a little differently than the one from Dimension Jump. So it's coming in off of somebody who may have met Ace once, or may have met his predecessor who didn't maybe quite know what Ace was like. But the first time I saw it, I was like, wait, ChrisBarrie doesn't know how to do Ace Rimmer? That's his character. And then I kind of figured it out. It was like not quite Ace Rimmer, but sort of Ace Rimmer. And the other guys didn't, the other dwarfers didn't know the difference. But it confused me at first, and I had to see it a couple of times before I caught on to that.
We get a funeral for Rimmer, and Lister does a eulogy, which is both sweet and very funny, and also includes a lot of references back to previous stuff.
We get
mention of being Alexander the Great's chief eunuch in a previous life. Name, what was the number? Name on the... sewing his name on the ship-issued condoms. The fact that he was a vending machine repairman. And then my favourite one of them all... mentioning Rachel the inflatable doll.
Oh god,
and then
I couldn't believe
panning
it.
And then
to
showing.
Rachel the inflatable doll sitting as a guest at the funeral.
I couldn't believe it. Dear. Out of all the deep cuts they could have chosen, they were like, yes, we'll choose Rachel, who only appeared, I want to say, like, was it once or twice we've seen Rachel?
I think she may have appeared once, but mentioned quite a lot, I think.
We've never seen Rachel.
Have we never seen Rachel?
Okay.
Never.
I was trying to think if we had or not, but yeah.
And in the beginning episodes, it was Inflatable Ingrid, and I think he developed such a relationship with Inflatable Ingrid that he wanted to, and I think that might have been a brand name that he wanted to give her a nice name.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, there you go. So for longtime fans at the time, that was the big reveal.
Yes.
Here is Rachel
His
after
widow.
all this. You waited 9 years for for this one moment.
And they dressed her up so nicely. It was
I know.
Yeah, I think the
I
last
was shocked,
reference.
though. I was shocked when I saw that. I was like, what? Oh,
Yeah,
I wanted the
like,
mystery to
that.
last.
The last reference we got to the doll, I think, was in Legion when he first gets to be the hard light thing, and he tells Crichton to unpack the doll. I can't remember if she was being called Rachel at that point or Ingrid, but she was.
Yeah.
Unpack Rachel because he's now a hard light hologram.
I think one of my favorite
and get the puncture repair kit. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines from this whole bit was when they're talking about him dying, and Kat says, "Oh, but
neither can I. I was only insulting him just this morning."
Because in my head I was like, you have just summed up your entire relationship to Arnold Rimmer in one line. Because we've said before on loads of times, like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like, obviously in the earlier seasons, Kat, like when he interacts, especially with Rimmer, is just like, a one-liner machine of like insults and stuff. And sometimes I've enjoyed it, and sometimes I felt, okay, maybe this joke's getting a bit flat now. But I did find this really funny that the way he said it, I was like, you've just acknowledged your like main relationship to Rimmer. But I liked it. I thought it was
And the
quite
fact
good.
it was like he's as a memory. It's like, this is a good memory. I just insulted him, and now he's gone. What am I going to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
Who's the cat going to insult now?
Probably Rachel. No, Rachel.
Yeah,
Rachel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like as well when they send him off, how they do they give him first officer status, which I thought was really lovely, and then they do the Rimmer salute, which I was like, oh man, I was like, this is heavy, this is getting heavy now. So
it was really lovely that he got made first officer Rimmer. I don't know. I don't think that sticks, so I don't think they have the ability to officially designate him that, but it's a nice honorary title at least.
It's a nice sentiment.
They can do what they want. They're the
who's going to stop
survivors.
them now? Yeah.
And on this tiny little ship, there's no spaceport to say you can't make him a first officer. Will it stick though? We don't know.
Yeah. And then of course they take him to deposit him amongst all the other ace Rimmers, and they are, I mean, I didn't count, but literally probably millions, because they make up a whole
like planetary
ring of a planet.
Yes. Yeah.
So
it's kind of awe-inspiring, beautiful, but also how did they get that many ace Rimmers? It's like, wow.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? You're swept up at first, like, oh, this is like really great. Like the music's really like swelling and it's really like emotional. And then you sort of stop and you think, wait, hang on, like how many are there?
Yeah.
But no.
And also, how did they all get to that? Like, is this in their dimension? Are they all? Did all of the aces get deposited in their dimension?
When they deposit it, Starbug and the thing that gets deposited, they go through like a wormhole, don't they? Or it looks like it. So
here's a fan theory.
Oh, okay, let's hear it.
Maybe I don't remember what Lister called it, but the device that they attached to the Lightby coffin had something of a dimension jump quality to it, and they followed it through to this place.
Okay,
that makes sense.
But it's sometimes you have to
it's
do
Red
the writing.
Dwarf.
That's our headcanon. So after all of this, the new ace, aka our Rimmer, unbeknownst to the cat and Crichton still, he goes to leave, accidentally ejects himself out of the cockpit of his ship.
That might have been another reference to Goldfinger, because I think that's the movie where he said there's a big red button, don't press it, because it's an ejection seat.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And actually, I think I read in an interview somewhere that Ace was very heavily inspired by James Bond, to the point where ChrisBarrie, I think, modelled like how he acted on Sean Connery. I believe
that makes a lot of sense.
And the wig, the first wig, he modelled it on. That gave him that gave him the inspiration of what the character should look and sound like. And Sean, did you say Roger Moore? It sounded like Roger Moore to me.
Well, he said in an interview,
it's like an amalgamation, I think.
In an interview, he's mentioned Sean Connery, I think, as an inspiration for it. But
I think Ace acts more like Roger Moore. Like the Connery Bond is obviously like known as suave, but let's face it. You watch some of those films, he doesn't. But he's not a good boy. He doesn't behave very well, especially with women. Mm-hmm. Roger Moore is like the more. And it's still suave, but he acts more like the straight gentleman, like the polite. So I think Ace acts more like a Roger Moore Bond, but maybe in terms of like, sounds a bit more like a Connery Bond, I guess. But
because I do remember from Dimension Jump, people were like throwing themselves at him instead of him like.
Instead of him like forcing himself on like other people, which is very Roger Moore again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another one of those differences, I think, between the portrayals of that Ace and this Ace, is that every time he never really hit on people as the other Ace in Dimension Jump, but lots of people were hitting on him. Here, it's him that makes the comment to the princess about maybe some sex later. So there is that difference there as well.
But it was up to her because, and she seemed to, call me Beryl, and that's
But he also said when he arrived on the ship that he turned down several marriage proposals.
Yes. What a lucky man.
Right.
What a guy.
Yes.
What a guy. Yeah, what a guy. I've got to say though, this episode ends quite and we mentioned this last weekend with episode 1, how that ended with the sort of JFK assassinating himself and time correcting it. It was quite a I guess a more dramatic finish than a lot of Red Dwarf episodes. Like obviously a lot of them end on like a gag or a very rushed conclusion or a more elaborate conclusion. This one felt quite, again, like more. There was comedy to it, but this one felt more dramatic than comedic overall. And I kind of like it, even though I know this is like mainly a comedy sci-fi show. I kind of like the more, I guess, like dramatic or drama aspects they're including this time around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like more comedy, but in this case, because of what the subject matter was, it was more fitting to be. You wanted a good memory, and parting ways was probably pretty final and touching.
That's it, yeah. And obviously you two know, but I'm curious. No spoilers, please.
No.
But I'm like this can't be the end of Rimmer for good, surely. He'll come back.
We shall see.
We shall.
If you're listening, don't spoil it in the comments. I don't know if you read the comments, Adam, but don't spoil it in the comments.
I do occasionally, so behave, listeners, please.
As you were saying, him getting ejected gives him a chance to have that final goodbye with everyone. So he sort of says goodbye to Crichton and the cat again. But then it's really Lister that he's giving a proper, and they sort of have a hug. And
it's nice. Real nice. Yeah,
it's so nice.
Nice moment.
See you, Davy boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And that was the end of the episode. Goodbye, Rimmer.
Goodbye, Rimmer. Yeah.
What is the show going to be like without him?
Oh, well,
find out next week.
I'm skeptical. I'm gonna see. Yeah,
there's a lot of change this season, so.
Oh right, okay. I better buckle up then.
Well,
it's a lot coming.
We already know that Rob Grant is no longer writing, and I feel like Rob Grant brought a lot to the writing. I mean, just the whole show. So it's Doug Naylor trying to be both writers.
Yeah. But talking of writers, this actually is the first time that there is a writer that isn't Rob Grant or Doug Naylor.
Mm-hmm.
There was a new writer for this episode, and I've just lost the name of it. Where is it?
Give me a second. So it was Paul Alexander.
Paul Alexander, that's it. And for the first time, it's not one of the two original writers to write the episode.
I think he had to give out, because I know there's another writer that comes on for a different episode in this series, but there may have been more. I just didn't do the research for.
Yeah, well, given that this series has more episodes, and it's just it was Doug running the show by himself now and didn't have Rob to write the episodes with. I'm guessing the workload was quite a lot, so getting some other writers in kind of makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you know what the original title of this episode was?
Oh, I did read that. It was something. Oh, go on. What was it?
Yeah.
Natural Born Rimmers, and it was based on the movie Natural Born Killers. And I think there were two things that changed it. One was it got the movie got some bad press because there was a copycat killing in the States.
Oh, right.
Based on, they said it was the movie. And then
Right.
Allegedly, Craig Charles said you might want to change that because it might have some.
Yeah, in the UK, if you say, "Oh, you're a natural-born Rimmer," that might attract some some interesting attention.
Yes.
I forget because I've watched this show, with Phil one every week now. I think when we first started, when I first heard he's called, Arnold Rimmer, I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting name." But you watch it so often, you just sort of forget. So it's that's a polite reminder.
His alter ego is Ace Rimmer. That could also bring up some things.
It can. Keep it clean in the comments, people. Come on, we're all adults. We're all mature here, right? So.
Yeah. So that's the episode. We have some regular features we do on the show here, Anne, which includes picking our favorite character for the episode. Now, I'm curious, given that you currently manage basically a ChrisBarrie Stan account. What's is Rimmer your favorite, or is Rimmer or Ace Rimmer your favorite character in this episode, or is it somebody else?
I love them both, but in this episode, barring the AR game, Lister is pretty much the man of the match because he brought everything together to make it possible for Rimmer to do what he probably would not have done on his own. And the way that he did it, it was out of care for his friend and wanting him to be a better person and to be a hero. That just Lister.
Nice, good choice.
Makes sense.
But second is Ace and Arnold because they're both awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Adam? Who's your favorite character in the episode?
Well, to go with the obvious, it has to be Rimmer and Ace. I do agree with you a lot, Anne, about Lister stealing a lot of it this time and how, like you say, he sets it up and there's those great... We see, like, the more, I guess, like, tender side of Lister's character. I just love, though, with Rimmer and Ace, especially with, in particular, that scene I mentioned earlier where, like you said, Rimmer is... ChrisBarrie is playing Rimmer, playing Ace, because as an actor myself, I just thought that was a perfect acting masterclass, really. I mean, ChrisBarrie demonstrates that often enough, but that was peak for me. Yeah. So yeah, I've got to give it to Rimmer and Ace.
So that you're picking two there, technically. If I had to force your hand and make you pick between them,
they are the same person.
I'll skirt around your challenge by saying similar, my favourite was the Rimmer who was acting like Ace. There you go. Okay. that skirts it a little bit.
Wait.
The Rimmer that was acting like Ace in the beginning of the episode, or the Rimmer that was acting like Ace at the end of the episode?
I'd say the one at the end of the episode.
All right, very good.
There you go. Skirt that. What about you, Phil?
I'm going to pick Rimmer. Just Rimmer, just generally.
Just
Rimmer. Our Rimmer, the Rimmer that we've been following in this series so far. Because I think from the end of series 6 to this episode is a nice story arc for him, because he, especially at the end of that final episode of series 6, he sort of steps up and is the brave person after his crewmates have been wiped out, whereas normally he would be the coward. He steps up and does the heroic thing, and that kind of continues a little bit into the beginning of this season. Last episode, he wasn't the kind of Weasley person that we'd known before. He felt a bit different, and that kind of journey continues and culminates in this episode. So I think for that alone, I'm going to give it to Rimmer for this episode.
And I'd like to add, there was a cutscene from this episode where Ace Rimmer explains that in Out of Time, in his version of Out of Time, he left his crew for dead, took the time drive, and went to like 17th or 18th century France and hid in a flower shop until Ace found him. So our Rimmer was actually like...
already ahead of this Rimmer.
Exactly.
Well, there we go. I did not know that. That's interesting. That would have been really interesting if they'd included that, I think.
Yeah.
It's a shame they didn't.
I think it was cut for time, probably, because there's so much already in this episode.
So the other thing we do is we pick our funniest moment in the episode. It can be for whatever reason you want. It can be, a single line, or it can be a whole scene. a whole sequence of jokes. But what, Anne, was your funniest moment in the episode?
The Rachel reveal, of course.
He didn't have very many friends, but those that he did have were with him at the end. Even Rachel, who I suppose in many ways is his widow.
Yeah. Yes,
course.
the long-standing Rachel.
There were a lot of funny scenes, but every time I see when Lister describes him as his widow, and then you get that pan, I was like, okay, I get a giggle out of that.
Absolutely. What about you, Adam?
For me, I'm gonna go with. I tried to pick one like a small moment, but for me, it's got to be the pre-credits sequence. And I know that's like nearly 5 minutes long, but you could just I can see myself just going back just to watch those 5 minutes and just loving it. It's everything I love about, like I said, like the pastiche of like B movies, of like exploitation movies with like, you know, low budget effects, like the Flash Gordon, James Bond. I just loved it. Perfect homage. So yeah, it's definitely got to be the pre-credits for me.
It doesn't feel like 5 minutes. So.
It doesn't. No, when the title sequence started and I looked at the time code, I was like, wow, that was 5 minutes. It literally felt like 2, but. Yes. No, I loved it. But what about you, Phil? What was your funniest moment?
I am with Anne on this one. It's got to be the Rachel reveal. It was already funny, but then the pan to her makes it even fun. And the reveal that we actually get to see her.
Yes,
yes. That just makes it. It's the definitely the bit that got the biggest laugh out of me in the episode. And finally, we just need to mark it out of 10. So we mark it out of 10 scutters. So how many scutters out of 10 would you give this episode, Anne?
Let's see. I'd say for what it was intended to do, I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Nice, strong score. Adam?
Oh, I flitted between 2 this week. We have this often, Anne, where we're like, oh, we thought about this one or the other. But if I'm leaning with my gut on this one, I am also going to give it an 8.5. It was between 8 and 8.5, but I think for like the moments where they slowed down a bit, like where they had those like nice, you know, quieter moments with Lister and Rimmer, the pre-credits, all that, yeah, definitely deserves the 8.5, I think, for me. So are you going to make it a hat trick, Phil? Are you going to say 8.5 as well?
I'm not. I'm going higher. I'm going for 9.5 on it. I really enjoyed the episode. I don't think there's nothing like particularly that there wasn't any moments where I thought this is going on too long, or you mentioned slow moments, but for me, I didn't really have any. They were funny. If my one thing would be probably the criticism. I don't even really want to call it a criticism because it doesn't matter so much in this episode, just like it didn't matter so much in the last episode. But there's less like jokes. There's less outright funny moments. There's still some, and I think there's probably more than there was last week. But it's a really good story despite that. And so even though this is a sci-fi comedy, I didn't mind that I wasn't laughing out loud every 2 minutes or whatever. But that's probably the only sort of minor thing that I have against it. So I'm going to give it 9.5.
Wow.
That's fair. Good score. I know, good score. You don't give out many 9.5s.
No, we've not had a 10 yet.
No,
will we ever?
I think we've both had a 9.5, but we haven't.
I'm racking my brain to think of a 10, and I think it has to be pretty. I can think of one that might be a 9.8.
Okay.
Ooh,
but
nice.
that's not coming for a little while.
Oh, right, slightly down the line.
Oh,
Interesting.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Before we round off, I mean, first of all, Anne, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you. But just as someone who's like watched the show, I've said this to Phil before. When I came into this, thankfully I haven't had any like major spoilers yet on what's to come. Mm-hmm. But I did have some people say, "Oh, when you get to series 7 and 8, they're the bad seasons." And I mean, yes, I'm only 2 episodes in series 7, but so far I disagree. I mean, what do you think of that notion that, you know, fans say, oh, series 7 and 8 are like some of the worst?
I think people have preferences about what they like in Red Dwarf. I came into Red Dwarf in the middle of series 8, so I had no idea what was going on. I thought Kat was a vampire.
You're not the first person to say that.
Yeah.
And Lister and Rimmer were both my favorite, like vying for my favorite character. I watched that a few times through, and then my PBS station went back to series 1 with the end, and I'm like, this is not the same show. I don't know what's going on. What happened to Red
different.
Dwarf? But I've been watching some series 8, and I can see where people don't like change, especially if they have their golden moments of the series. A lot of people like 3, 4, and 5.
It's all right. We're Doctor Who fans. We know that fans don't like change. So
Yes.
that's a bit.
It seems like every time there's something new that comes out, people will complain because it's new. But if I think both series 7 and 8 both have positive aspects to them. May not be for everybody, but just ride it through. You'll find something that you like.
Nice. Well, 2 episodes in, it's a thumbs up from me. I've enjoyed both of those, so yeah.
Excellent. Well, that just about does it. Last thing is to say, is there anything you'd like to plug? Obviously, you've got the Twitter accounts. What's the app for that?
Twitter is ChrisBarrie Fans. At ChrisBarrie Fans. Facebook is ChrisBarrie, and then parentheses and Red Dwarf in parentheses, and that is a private group. So you have to say that you're not going to break our rules, which is make sure everything that if you post something, it's about ChrisBarrie, and don't be a jerk.
Yeah, no posting, no posting about Craig Charles on that. Only ChrisBarrie.
I get really rimmery, so I have people who will, like for Father's Day, they posted about Lister being a dad, and Rimmer is shut up.
Oh right, okay.
Anyway, so my rimmery action for that was that's not necessarily about ChrisBarrie or Rimmer, or that's more about Lister. And then I have to remove the post, and then they're like, but it's about he's in it, and I'm like, no. And then on Instagram, it's also ChrisBarrie Fans. And I try to post something every day. It's probably more like pictures of ChrisBarrie, or ChrisBarrie as Britus, or ChrisBarrie as Rimmer, or ChrisBarrie with a car, because I know he loves those. But it's I try to post something every day. I think I missed 2 days because I wasn't feeling well. And everybody's welcome to follow and enjoy. I hope I'm doing a good job, because that was my only concern, was that I wouldn't be able to interact with the fans as much as I'd like to.
Well, from what I've seen, I've only experienced the Twitter side of it, but you seem very active on there and posting all the time. So I think you're doing
I apologize
a good job on
that. I try to keep things mild and family friendly, and just so everybody can enjoy how great ChrisBarrie is. Oh, there's also a YouTube page that I don't think is being updated right now, because Danny is away from that. But if you want to see some like really classic ChrisBarrie on television, it goes back into Spitting Image and Saturday Live and Hale and Pace, when he was working with Hale and Pace. I forget the show, but but it's got all of his older things, and it's really amazing to see how far he's come from a young impressionist to like a full actor.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, ace.
Excellent. Ace indeed. So Adam, do you want to plug your socials and stuff?
Sure, yeah. So if you can find me on YouTube, Adam Martyn with a Y. I make videos on Doctor Who and various other pop culture-y things. And you can follow me on Twitter, which is at Adam Martyn AMTV, for daily ramblings, memes, the occasional giveaway. Yeah, that's me. What about you, Phil?
You can find me on Facebook, not Facebook, Twitter. I mean, don't find me on Facebook. I never post anything on Facebook. Twitter is at IUDEX_Phil. I spell it because nobody will get it if I don't spell it, because it's pronounced Udex. But it's IUDEX_Phil. And also, don't forget to check out our own Twitter, the show's Twitter account, which is at AllDeadDavePod. So check that out as well. And of course, I've got my YouTube channel, just my name, Philip Hawkins, Philip with 1L, where I upload this podcast as well as lots of content on Doctor Who and other such things. By the time this episode comes out, I think we'll be into the next season of Doctor Who, so there'll be lots of Doctor Who content on there.
Lots of discussion.
Nice.
So so there's that as well, so do come and subscribe there. That's it. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll be back for another episode next week. See you then.
See you later.
Bye-bye.